You have seen the film now. Did you expect what you have seen? What was your impression? The idea was to talk to people who had experiences with the Second World War, like, for example, Renate Aris, who was a Jewish child when the Second World War started, and yeah, very different themes, different people. So what was your impression?
We might just go around. It's really important that it's mostly connected with Dresden. I believe that describing what happened locally, it's really a priority for a place. It's very multi-layered, and after you really feel, may I see more? May I actually listen to more of the interviews, to listen to individual interviews? So it's surely a good base. It functions as a film, but also to produce didactic materials for schools. And it's, you know, it's very important that it's so close. You cannot really distance from it. It happened, I mean, some of the people have spoken about this very street where we are sitting now in Memorial. And it surely tells them, and it shows these layers and complexities from perspective of survivors, but also granddaughters and grandsons of the perpetrators. So it's kind of very good mosaic, and the archive parts actually contribute and explain things further. So I congratulate you.
I can say that, well, I can agree with the testimonies, what we heard from the film, that it's very, very important to talk about it, to talk about the Holocaust, to talk about the Second World War, and to and they are bring us the real stories from their relatives, from their grandmothers and grandfathers, and it's very interesting also to watch it from this side, from the German side, and it was really, really interesting. And yes, I also want to congratulations to you for the film. It was really, really good, and it brings to my memory when we were recorded in Dresden all of the testimonies what we watched in the film.
Okay, so I think that I wanted to say that what said also Nina, that is really very interesting watching stories, German stories, because when we are talking with witnesses or second or third generation in Slovakia, we are still talking about German, but not about German people who were attacked also by the Second World War. And I think that Germany made a great job with remembering of the Second World War and Holocaust, what we are still dealing in Slovakia, and we have still problems with that. If we are speaking about, for example, about the question of guilty, what also Karl Jaspers wrote a great text or thesis about the question of the guilty and the collective guilty in our nation. In Slovakia we don't have the right answer still until today. I made a lot of interviews with survivors of Shoah who survived camps as Auschwitz and others, also Slovak camps. And it's in that film, in your film, was really interesting, and I think that the great way how we can speak about Shoah today, if we will mix more generations, and also if we have witness or the part of member of the family who was on the opposite side, and how this family could remember, and what could do for remembering, and what could do for future in the sentence never again. So thanks that you choose people from different generations, with different stories, and as I said, it's really interesting to see the German view, and especially from Dresden, from the city, what was very attacked with the Second World War. So thanks.
I will continue in a circle. I have to say that I was from the very beginning waiting if you will give me something surprising, something unexpected, because as we are digging in a topic of World War II, okay, from a Czech view, but still digging. So I was waiting, and I got it, and I got those two very strong stories for me. One story of a grandson of this soldier who was making his diary. This it was really new and really impressive for me that something like this exists, that it's so straight, so naive. And I would like to listen more. As Vesna said, I would like to view it whole, and I would like to know more about the story. And also very strong for me was this very last moment with Mr. Topf and his story and his attitude to memory, attitude to history as something what cannot be only gone through, but he has to somehow go with it and struggle with it. So thank you for that, and thank you for this effort with finding witnesses as this, because I think it's so important to make this effort to try to find those people who will somehow bring those unexpected angles of view on such a topics as World War II, which we saw many films about it and heard a lot of speeches about it and so on. So thanks.
I absolutely agree, because now we are 80 years after the Second World War, and we really know a lot of facts of Second World War, a lot of facts about Shoah, and we saw a lot of films, great films, read a lot of books, and many cultural pieces or art pieces were made. But now, and after more than 8 years after the Second World War, we still need to talk about it. We need to make deals with our modern history in our nations, but we need to find maybe new ways how to speak about it, because as we can see in our countries, again, a lot of situations where are very similar as was happened through the 20th century. So we still need to find new way how to speak about it. For example, the newest Oscar films now, Zone of Interest is the great example. Sorry, is the great example how we can speak about the Shoah and about the Nazis today, and maybe I can, if you don't see this film, you need to, or you have to, because it's really another storytelling how to about the Second World War and Shoah.
I will be brief because many were said. It's always very hard to see these testimonies of witnesses, and I think the important is that these organizations from these countries cooperate on this project, Cinemastories of WWII, and we can share or compare these testimonies of witnesses, and that is very important to compare this point of view of these witnesses, I think, and I'm glad that our organizations still can create these movies and that we can document stories of witnesses.
Thank you. I would like to actually hear more from you, from the authors of this film, because, yeah, as you said in the beginning, a lot of people are usually involved in the making of something like that. And I myself transcribed just one of our 10 interviews, so I know what you did. And I would like to hear more, because there are so many layers in the film and so many different perspectives. We have testimonies of survival, of relatives, of families who were on the side of the perpetrators. So I would like to hear more of what was your thought behind the selection of the stories, of what was the leading message for you personally to do with the film, and how to create a balance. And also how to bring that to schools, because what we saw here is, as I understand, the final version, and there is also another version with additional materials for schools, and we would like to exchange experience also in that regard.
Thanks. Yeah. So I watched all of those 10 interviews, and I wasn't the one who made them or who prepared them, so thanks to Daniel Rister who did. But I found it very interesting to see all those different perspectives, and each witness tells so many different stories. So, for example, we have Mrs. Ares, who was both persecuted as a Jewish child, but also witnessed the bombing of Dresden, which are two, well, different topics, but they're, of course, linked to each other. And, of course, the title of the project is about people who were persecuted during World War II and National Socialism, but we didn't feel like we could make a film from a German perspective and only talk about people who were persecuted, but we also had to address the fact that it was Germans who did the persecution. And yeah, that's why we tried to balance it out and maybe talk about victims and perpetrators. And what I always find so interesting is this one soldier who comes back from the Eastern Front and says, "This is so horrible, they cannot do this to us." And it's such an interesting thought process, because he saw how terrible it was, but he still participated in it. And yeah, that's always a chilling moment for me. And we did create a second version for schools, which is shorter. And one of our colleagues, Heiko, he is a teacher, and he created an entire program around it. Maybe Antje can say more about it. So that we can bring the film into school classes and don't have to spend an entire hour watching this film and then continue talking about it, but can give sort of a brief glimpse into all those different facets, those different stories, and then try to go in depth and maybe encourage also the students to ask their own families, what did my great-grandparents do, or grandparents, or whatever. And my work with this film actually has encouraged me to do that in my own family, so that was a very interesting story of its own. But it is something that, especially as Germans, I feel like we all have to do. We all have to ask in our own families, like, what's the situation? And that's why I found it so important to have those witnesses who talked about, like Mr. Topf, his family, who was actively working with the SS in the Holocaust. Because I feel as Germans we have to see people whose families are guilty and who try to make amends for that. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe something from Daniel, who was looking for the witnesses of time, and he was choosing who he wanted to interview. And when we had the first view of the film, we had a little discussion with 3 witnesses of time, Mr. Topf, Mrs. Ares, and Mrs. Glass. And this was, after looking the film, Daniel described it as something I really felt too. And he said, it's one thing talking about this historical stuff, but what we try to do, and he tries to do as a historian, and what we try to do in our daily work, is to get an emotional eine Verbindung, an emotional connection to those people we are telling the stories to via this film, or via the film we show in school classes. And maybe this is one good possibility to get people involved in what happened in history, especially in German history. One second thing is what Uliana often describes, what is important for our work, because normally what we do here is another topic of history. But as we learn again and again that everything is is connected, and the school project, Heiko's idea was to show how the history in former times still has to do with our days. For example, if people whose families have been involved in the Second World War, for example, they turn to another behavior during the time of the GDR, and that's what we want to ask. What we want to ask at school classes, what we want to ask ourselves, and yeah.
Yes, we think as historians in dates, and the biographies flow through the dates, and that tell we the youth in the schools, and we encourage them to talk to their own families, to question them, and to search answers in themselves. What would I do in such a situation, in a totalitarian system? What would I do? And I'm a historian, and we work with documents. And for in my opinion, it's very important that the eyewitnesses, with their own experiences, stay at the side to the documents, because the documents speak the language of the dictatorship, and the eyewitnesses or their families speak a language of victims or of perpetrators. And that's why it's very important to understand also the documents and to read the documents in a correct way is not the right word, but you understand to interpret them correctly.
Thank you. So many wise words was said. I agree with you, all of you. I just want to say it's really important to show these stories to students and young people, because especially in Slovakia, I don't want to say most of them, but many of them believes in hoaxes and disinformations. Many of people, not only students, but many old people, teachers, believes that the Holocaust didn't happen, or that didn't happen. So it's really important to show these stories to young people, to teachers, and show them the truth and the horrible stories and sad stories. So yes, I think that our work is really important for everyone.
Thank you for this movie, and that we had a chance to see it. And I agree with all of you that it's important to keep these testimonies, to preserve it, and to share it with especially youngsters. And it can be quite challenging. So good luck to you. And thank you very much.
I believe that a movie like this and other movies like that that show a subjective view from witnesses, an individual view, to document this is really important, because in Germany and Austria, I can speak for other countries, but World War II is still seen as rather living history. Like, it's pretty close to us emotionally, from a self-understanding in the national collective. And from the age of the people in this group here, like most of our grandparents or parents still lived through World War II. I met my grandparents who lived through World War II, who told me at least some stories about it. Like, I have a personal connection. But young people that are born today, they won't have this. If you're born today, you will likely never meet somebody that lived through World War II. You will never meet surviving victims of the Holocaust. And this also changes how you see the history and how close it is to yourself. And therefore, it's really important to keep, or to try at least to keep the memory and the subjective memory of the people as artistically as we can, so that they also can get a connection to this, because otherwise it becomes an old history, like how we would view the Napoleonic Wars or something, which is very far from us and nobody is really emotionally invested in it. It's like an academic topic. And the Second World War and the Holocaust are too important from the perspective of human rights and democratic understanding to let it go to become old history that's disconnected from modern life. So I believe the movie is really important, and other movies like that are really important for today's youth.
Yeah, I think when I first saw the film, is sort of, well, I feel like especially nowadays, where, you know, like all these right-wing movements are, you know, on the rise again in Europe, all over the world, really. And you can see how much more like important it's becoming once again that we do remember our history, and especially in Germany, where we have to, you know, we have this responsibility to keep that in mind and to talk about it. And I feel like it was said quite well in the film towards the end, where it's this, we have to keep it in our minds, just we cannot forget about it, just in order for it to not happen again. And as you just now said, we're so lucky at this moment right now where we still have people who lived through it, who are able to tell their stories and to talk about what they experienced from whatever side it was, but just so that we have this opportunity to sort of, you know, hear these people speak and like to make these films so that other generations are going to be able to hear about it as well. Because obviously it is so much more moving to hear from people who actually lived through it rather than just reading about it in textbooks and, you know, like hearing your teacher in history class talk about it. Because obviously, as important as that is, yeah, I mean, obviously hearing people who actually lived through it or experienced it talk about it is so much more moving, and I think does make just such a big difference in terms of how you actually perceive history and believe history as well. Like, you know, in nowadays where like with people denying the Holocaust or, you know, denying history, and to have these like witnesses, and that way you can, I mean, yeah, obviously you can talk to someone who like lived through the Holocaust and still deny it, but I feel like that's a lot harder than, you know, doing that if it's just in textbooks. But yeah, and from a German perspective, even just statistically, I mean, you know, there were so many people who supported the regime and like this whole system. Obviously, there's going to be loads of Germans whose parents or whose grandparents were supporters and like who played some sort of active role or less active role, and to have this responsibility as Germans to speak to our grandparents about it and know about our family's histories. So yeah.
Thank you for subtitling in English. I asked myself, will it work, subtitled eyewitnesses? But I see and I hear and I saw it by myself that it worked. I'm very glad that it worked. And I'm very interested in your interviews, the interviews of the 3 other countries and the films, and interested in these views. And yes, I believe that it will work subtitled. Yes. So who wants?
It's so important to support each other because. You know, working in Croatia and other post-Yugoslav countries, where we actually are dealing with burden of Second World War, Holocaust, other genocides and war crimes, and then with war crimes related to the 90s, it's very frequent that the crimes which surely have happened, which have been documented, in many cases the courts have actually processed them and the judicial facts have been established. But still, these facts are disputed and crimes are not acknowledged. So it is that it's coming again and again. And you know, seeing Mr. Topf sharing documentation without him opening the private archive, there wouldn't be many books and texts written about the Topf and Sons contribution to the Holocaust. So it's very rare to see that someone who is so close, whose family was so close to the center of the criminal enterprise, would eventually contribute so freely and openly. So it's a very important example for us. So I would wonder, okay, how can we share this in classes in Croatia and other post-Yugoslav countries? But these are all difficult questions. I'm completely convinced that dealing with genocide and war crimes, it's not a matter for the country where they have been committed only, and that it's very important to cooperate. So, okay, this is our small enterprise and cooperation. There'll be more cooperation efforts. In our film, we have chosen a topic of female partisans because the topic of resistance as well as topic of suffering matters to us. But it's that the contribution of resistors, of partisans, in the last 3 decades in Croatia got really distorted, surprisingly distorted. And we simply wanted to bring up a story of partisans and their individual perspective. So it's 4 stories. 2 are not with us anymore. 1 have actually passed away as a young partisan. She joined partisans in 1941, in the first year of war. She was in Prva proletarska brigada, the first proletar brigade, meaning that she didn't struggle close to her home, but she went with units wherever it was needed. And she passed away in 1943 of typhus. Other one, Maria Pipek, she was from the island and she fought in all main battles, Neretva, Sutjeska. She also got a typhoid, but survived it. She doesn't know how. She says, I spent 2 weeks with the goat in the goat shed, and when the owner came and saw me and found me, we both wondered how I survived, because she didn't eat anything. She doesn't recall that she drank anything, but she survived. She was young and strong, but felt the consequences whole her life. She passed away in 2015. And then there are 2 who are still with us. One is 105 years old now. And she was, you know, she was in intelligence, really. As she was working in museum, she was kind of respected. You know, she was the educated person. And she would spend a lot of time near to a railway station in Osijek, and she would report on movements of troops, and later joined partisans when it became too dangerous. She was also taken and she was in prison, but managed to escape. So she's still alive, and Zdenka is also still alive. So they joined when most of their generation joined, because the partisans, in our case, have really been most often between years of 15. I mean, now we would think about them as underage. And let's say 25. So it's that this was a young generation fighting and actually winning in a fight, thinking that their values of equality, freedom, and justice will prevail. But in our case, it's actually happened that in my generation, we have seen that although we have been learning about brotherhood and unity for many years, in a war, the hate prevailed. Not just to go now in story, how it was in our war. What is really important is to record the stories and to keep interpreting them. And, you know, as long as survivors are with us, as long as fighters are with us, asking them questions so that we can work on interpretations in later years and helping each other to reach some acknowledgement individually, but also institutionally, because nowadays, you know, presidents of the countries, presidents of Croatia, the ministers in the countries, they are the ones contributing to distortion. So it's that institutions do not just preserve, but some also contribute to distortion of facts. So it's, you know, it's very important that we keep working together on documenting facts, preserving stories of witnesses of time, and this film would be interesting for us also. So it's important that it was done, and I look forward seeing all our films so that we can see how to work with them and support each other.
I can continue. When we received this grant and this funding, we had for a few years before, we had an idea about making a film about city of Theresienstadt, which is like a small city in central Bohemia, which was biggest ghetto for Jewish people during the Second World War, and we visited this city like a few times before, and we were always impressed how empty it is, how can like man in 2024 see such an example of a ghost town in a Bohemia. And so we were thinking about how can we transfer this feeling of abandoned city in some way to the movie. And so we tried. And so our movie is somehow based on interviews with witnesses, but they are not, but at the very ending stage of editing, we decided that we will not see them at all in a movie. So they are, so we only listen to their voices. In the town, we started asking also like current citizens how they feel about the city, how they feel about the city they live in, and what do they think about like a future of this place, because as I said, it's somehow abandoned. There are like strong voices, and strong voices also from like local stakeholders and from municipality and local officials that the war lasted only 4 years, and that this city has much more longer and nicer history. So they are suggesting that the best way would be like to cut it off from history, those 4 set years, and look only to the future. And what was like interesting for us and interesting for the movie is that we somehow see after this 30 years of freedom that it's not working. That this like perspective of just like forgetting and going forward doesn't work. I wouldn't say at all, but it doesn't work, and that the city will have to somehow find like another way, some way to face its past, some way to face its past connected to the current problems and connected to it that it has to find some way to the future and some way to live in such a sad place. Because like what I didn't said, and I should have said it in the beginning, because like for Czech Republic, this is the place. This is the place where like in Czech Republic there isn't any place where would like so many Jews died during the Second World War. Hundreds, thousands of them were transported away, but also like 30,000 of Jewish people died there in these streets during those just 4 years. So it's like one of the, or not one of the, is the most important place of our commemoration of on Shoah and on Jewish history. So we tried. So we hope that you will see it someday, and we will be happy to share your thoughts and opinions after that.
And about Slovak film, so we tried to share more stories and more views about the Second World War and about the Shoah. In the film or in the movie, we used stories of survivors who survived not only the Slovak camps, especially Sereď concentration and labor camp, but also other camps in Poland, nowadays Poland, but also we in the film we have edited films of people who were hidden in the forests, especially after the Slovak national uprising. Also people who are now the second generation of survivors. For example, we used the story of one woman who was born to family where both parents survived the Shoah, and they lived in Košice, in the small city or bigger city in Slovakia, what through the Second World War wasn't the part of the Slovakia. This city was the part of Hungary, and transport of Jewish people came later than in Slovakia. And this family is very special because also after the Second World War they were still religious, and it was also hard to be kosher and other practices what had to do religious Jewish people through the communist regime. So that was also interesting how the second generation of survivors lived their life through another regime and with the memories of Shoah. And also this witness told us about the memories of, for example, crying of women in synagogue after the Second World War because everyone lost their families through the Shoah. And also we used stories in the film of people who were in Slovak national uprising, also people who weren't Jewish, but they were the part of Czechoslovak army, and they wanted to fight with Nazis, and not only with Nazis, but also Slovak Nazis, Garda. This is also still problem of Slovakian dealing with modern history, that a lot of people now saying that Slovakia or our people were good, everything bad made German people and German Nazis, not Slovak, and that's the lie. And nowadays conspiracy, so we try to get knowledge, true facts and knowledge about that. Also, we used in that film the story of another woman who was born. Also, the parents who survived the Shoah, and her story is interesting with the emigration in 1968 to West world, and after the occupation. And her story is interesting also from that view that, or that's from that side that she married Rabbi, and in 90s she emigrated again to Israel, and they have their bookshop, and they still live there, but her story is interesting that, okay, her parents survived the Second World War. She wanted to live with freedom, so she emigrated in 1968 to England, and then she lived in Switzerland, and after that, in 90s, she, with her husband and 3 sons, emigrated to Israel, and her 3 sons needed to go to the war, so to the army, and every week she waited on them, and she didn't know if will they come home or no. So that was about also, or the metaphor or the message what we want to say is that, okay, we still have the wars in the world, and now it's the bigger and bigger topic of our world, but and also, for example, anti-Semitism didn't die, and what we can do with this, and how can we speak about it in nowadays?
So, are there any questions? So, thank you a lot for all your sentences, and yeah, have a nice evening together. And I hope you will have a good time in Dresden, a very short time, and so I hope you will come again to our city, and we will come again to you and work together on these important topics to understand history and to make together a good future for us and our children. Thanks.